I have a question that has nothing to do with today's meeting.
I'm ready.
Does anybody have a question about today's meeting? Oh. Can we talk a little bit about the guidebook?
Yes, of course.
What is your assessment of some of the claims that we're hearing in the community about what this guidebook will do?
Well, I'm hearing an enormous amount of misinformation. So maybe I can explain what it is. It's actually a guidebook. It's not a statutory plan, it's not a law. It's a guidebook. The problem that we've always had is when we go to do planning for older neighborhoods and we want to do a redevelopment plan, and most neighborhoods really want one, they're long and they're complicated and you start from scratch every time. What the guidebook does is it codifies a bunch of the stuff that is the best practices in neighborhood redevelopment plans across the city and puts them into one place, so that future development plans will be much shorter because they can just refer to the guidebook. They can say chapters 3, 4, and 5 of the guidebook apply in this street. So that's the plan here. And so the way that I put it is, what the guidebook is it is a cake recipe. But it doesn't tell any neighborhood that they have to have a particular cake. And when the neighborhood is ready to do a plan, they can say, well, do we want a chocolate cake, a vanilla cake, or a red velvet cake? That all the cake recipes are in the guidebook. The only thing it does say is when you're ready to do a plan, we're baking a cake.
So I feel like we're doing this history repeats thing when it comes to this guidebook, every time it comes to this room behind you. What do you think is driving that misinformation?
Well, you know, look, people love their neighborhoods. And of course, people are always nervous about change coming to a neighborhood. And what I've been saying for 10 years now is, look, the majority of developed neighborhoods in the city have lost population over the years as the kids grow up. A lot of them are unable to attract young families. And when that happens, one of two things tends to happen. Either the neighborhood stagnates because there's no redevelopment, or the neighborhood gentrifies and nobody can afford to live there anymore. And the seniors who are in the neighborhood can't afford the property taxes because the value of their home went through the roof. And thoughtful planning is how you prevent that from happening, and how you think about how to create a neighborhood in the future that meets the needs of the people that live there now and the people that will live there in the future. So I often say, imagine the strip mall on the end of your street with the pizza shop and the 7-Eleven, and think about what else could be there. Maybe there's still a pizza shop and a 7-Eleven at the bottom, but there's room for seniors to live above who grew up in the neighborhood but don't want to maintain their home anymore. Or maybe there'll be room for people just starting out in life to want to live in the same neighborhood. Those are the sorts of things that we have to be thoughtful about as neighborhoods change and develop. The challenge that we've got here is we've got a bunch of anonymous people who may have something to do with the election this fall, trying to stir up fear and misinformation by saying stuff like, someone could tear down a house on a 50-foot lot and build an 8-plex there. Well, guess what? They can do that today. They just have to come to council and ask for permission. What the guidebook does is it actually puts context around all of that, which I think is really the important thing. And it doesn't take away, it actually doesn't change the zoning on a single lot in the entire city. So I'm quite irritated about the misinformation, because this has to be coming from a place of appreciating what's in a neighborhood and figuring out ways to make it better.
So there have been delays already in this process. If you were to play pundit, next week, will council vote on this, yay or nay, or kick it down the road?
I sure hope council votes on it. I have not heard from a single member of council that they want to delay it. Genuinely, there may be members of council who want to kill it and think they don't have the votes to kill it, so they'll delay it instead. But by and large, this has been a lot of work over many, many years. There's been enormous engagement. And I think we're ready to thumbs up or thumbs down on it after the public hearing.
So what are Calgarians supposed to make of this notion that they haven't been consulted?
We have been working on this almost as long as I've been mayor, I want to say. And it has come back to council on a few occasions and gone back for further engagement and consultation. There's a difference between, I don't like what you came up with and you never asked me. And it is not fair to say you never asked me.
I've
been having a hard time with this because the planning, jargon, terminology is even making my eyes glaze over.
Yeah, me too.
In terms of people outside this building understanding what this will actually do, you kind of described it earlier, but what is the kind of most straightforward way about what this will change?
What this does is It puts together a number of typologies and special process areas in order for us to determine the future.
Don't do that.
What this does is it puts in one place the best practices of how older neighborhoods can grow and change. And that is everything from how do you encourage local businesses along commercial streets, to how do you sensitively replace buildings that have hit the end of their life cycle, to how do you build more street life, to how do you preserve mature trees. And instead of starting from scratch in every single neighborhood, this brings all those best practices together into a menu that when your neighborhood is ready for a new plan, you can pick and choose from.
So is this a prescriptive template document?
That's one way of putting it. I wouldn't say it's that prescriptive, but it is a template document that people will be able to use for future neighborhood plans. They'll be able to pick and choose from it.
You were saying that there's been a bunch of misinformation in the community. Would it be more accurate to say that it's disinformation?
Well, I mean, certainly there are members of council who have been spreading things that are false, whether they don't understand it themselves or they're doing it for their own political motives. And there are a number of community associations who are saying things that confuse me. But there are also a number of community associations who are generally pretty good and generally very thoughtful about this stuff, who also have had questions. And I think part of that is because it is complicated, and I think people have not been able to use very plain language to describe the benefit of it.
Could there be value in having some sort of an accompanying document that is a plain language version of it?
It was supposed to be the plain language version. But yes, I think absolutely. And I think I'm really going to encourage anyone who wants to speak at the public hearing. We'd love to have you, but please make sure you listen to the administration presentation first, because that may in fact solve many of your questions.
The fact that there's such a variety of community associations, you know, whether it's Elbow Park, Crescent Heights, points further north and points further south, they're saying the same things, which is, this is going to destroy my neighborhood.
Well, I'm hearing from a lot of community associations whose neighborhoods are not even included in the guidebook. And so clearly, there's a lot of confusion out there.
What should those people do? Should they call their counselor?
Well, listen, you know, I will take some responsibility, because I haven't talked about this publicly, that it is very, very, very confusing. So go to the website and learn a little more, tune in to council on Monday and listen to administration's presentation, because they're going to give a comprehensive presentation on what it really is, and see if that answers many of your questions.